Have you ever wondered who's really steering your life? Is it the conscious you that plans, decides, and reflects? Or is there a deeper, hidden part of your mind quietly making choices before you're even aware of them? Today we're going to explore the fascinating world of the adaptive unconscious. We're going to dive deep into the neuroscience that's challenging everything we think we know about free will and agency. And most importantly, discover why this knowledge is deeply relevant to your everyday life. Hey everyone, I'm Henry, and you're watching day 51 of my channel Henry's Millions, where I dive deep into psychology, spirituality, and the mind, helping you unlock your personal potential and understand the forces that shape your life. Today's talk is again inspired by Timothy D. Wilson's Strangers to Ourselves and neuroscience research from Frontiers in Human Neuroscience and PubMed Central. So the two minds, conscious versus the unconscious. Modern psychology shows our minds operate on two interconnected but distinct levels. The conscious mind, your inner voice, the planner, analyzer, storyteller. For some, this is simplistic, but in a future video, we're going to talk about inner voices and why a lot of those aren't even yours. That's going to be a shocker. So the conscious mind is slow, deliberate, and reflective. It's the part you hear when you're thinking things through, making plans, or reflecting on your day. It's slower, but it can step in and change course, break old habits, and help you grow, because everybody's growing today, right? Everybody's changed. Then there's the adaptive unconscious. It's fast, it's automatic, efficient, handling most of your daily decisions, perceptions, and behaviors without your awareness. It's the reason you could drive home on autopilot or sense when something's off in a conversation or a person, maybe a bad date, even if you can't explain why, but it can be rigid and stuck in its ways. So the unconscious is like your backstage crew running the show behind the scenes. And the conscious mind is like the spokesperson, explaining and justifying choices after they've been set in motion. Together, these two systems shape everything you do, often without you even realizing. So, what is this illusion of control that we now are led into? We love to believe we're in charge of our actions, but research shows that much of our behavior is driven by unconscious processes. The conscious mind often acts as the narrator, rationalizing decisions that have already been made, right? Just like those people that are blameless. They can never do any wrong, and meanwhile, they leave death and destruction in their trail. So this illusion of control is one of the most persistent tricks our mind plays on us. Two quick things about this here. The self-serving bias, I wanted to just add these. The self-serving bias in billionaire success stories. So one of the most fascinating ways that this illusion of control shapes our lives is through self-serving bias. This is the tendency to attribute our successes to our abilities, effort, character, our business prowess, while blaming failures on external factors like bad luck, unfair circumstances, or the actions of others. For instance, many billionaires and high-profile entrepreneurs often credit their personal genius, their vision, or their relentless work ethic for their massive success. However, their stories frequently involve significant elements of luck, timing, or circumstances beyond their control. And you'll never hear about that. Oh, that's terrible. Then there's depressive realism. This is interesting. So when the illusion fades, interestingly, not everyone experiences the illusion of control to the same degree. Research on depressive realism suggests that people with mild depression are often more accurate in judging their own lack of control over events. In classic experiments, participants were asked to press a button to try to make a light turn on, when in reality, the outcome was random. Depressed participants tended to recognize that they had no real control, while non-depressed individuals overestimated their influence. It's a sad reality, but very interesting to know. All right, so the neuroscience of decision-making. Briefly, we're going to talk about Libet soon and the challenge to free will. These are the last names of people, not concepts. So how deep does this rabbit hole go? Groundbreaking neuroscience experiments have revealed that our sense of conscious control is even more illusory than we imagined. It was all the talk. I don't know how many years ago, but you must have heard about it. In the 80s, Benjamin Libet conducted a now classic experiment. Participants were asked to move their hand at a moment of their choosing and to note when they first became aware of the intention to move. So using EEG, Libet found that a signal in the brain, the readiness potential, began several hundred milliseconds before participants reported any conscious intention. In other words, the brain had already started preparing the movement before the person was aware of deciding. You see, now this is all starting to make sense. All of these different thoughts and studies and understandings are converging. So later, someone else, Chun Song-soon and colleagues, used brain scans to predict simple choices, like pressing a left or right button, up to 7 seconds before participants consciously made their decision. Imagine your brain decides before you do. Imagine that for a second. That's what's happening. The conscious experience of making a choice is often just a story that your mind tells you after the unconscious has already acted. I don't know if I'm conscious or unconscious right now. Probably unconscious for the rest of the day, but not right now. So these findings don't mean that we are robots, at least not most of us. But they do challenge the everyday notion of free will. Our sense of being in charge is, at least in part, a narrative constructed after the fact. All right, so let's talk about the power and pitfalls of automatic thinking for a moment. So the adaptive unconscious is a master of pattern detection, right? Think about your unconscious. It lets you drive home on autopilot, sense danger in a split second, or catch a subtle shift in someone's tone. So this automatic processing is non-conscious, fast, unintentional, uncontrollable, and effortless. It's especially tuned to negative information like threats, risks, or anything that might harm you. So this negativity bias is a survival mechanism, but it can also make us anxious or overly cautious. With some people, I mean, it's gone haywire. But speed, it's still great. Speed comes at a cost, though, right? It's operating quickly, but it comes at a cost. Unconscious is efficient, but it's also stubborn and slow to update its patterns. No, I'm not talking about your partner. We're talking about the unconscious. Once it learns a belief or stereotype, it tends to stick, even in the face of new evidence. This is why biases and prejudices can persist and why we often bend new information to fit what we already believe. So when the unconscious takes over, this is the automatic versus the controlled processing, what you control versus what's automatic. So have you ever performed a skill so well that you didn't have to think about it? Of course you have. That's your adaptive unconscious at work. So once you've mastered a complex behavior, like playing an instrument or riding a bike, you actually perform better when you're not consciously thinking about every move. And then overthinking can actually interfere with the smooth operation of automatic processes. So we've got the automatic thinking, controlled thinking. For automatic, it's non-conscious, it's fast, It's effortless, and it's outside of your direct control. And for controlled thinking, it's conscious, slow, effortful, and flexible. So the unconscious excels at handling the immediate present, while the conscious mind is better at planning, reflecting, and correcting errors. Hopefully, most people do, some don't. But there's no perfect system. I don't have a beef to pick with anyone, but we've all seen it before. But there's no perfect system deciding which mind should handle which task. And this can lead to mistakes and cognitive biases. If you remember, I had a video back, I don't know how many days ago, about cognitive biases, at least one. There was one about 18 biases. You can find it. Just search through, look for the number 18. It's a great video. It's quick and very informative. So let's talk about self-fulfilling prophecies for a moment and the shaping of reality. So the adaptive unconscious doesn't just interpret the world, it can shape it. If you expect someone to be unfriendly, you might unconsciously act distant, prompting them to actually respond that way. This is so real, so true, the self-fulfilling prophecies. If you make assumptions, if you go in with certain beliefs, you will make a part, if not all of it, come true. So if you think someone's going to be rude or mean or bad, you're going to turn them into that. So if you expect someone to be unfriendly, you unconsciously act distant and they respond like that, right? Or etc. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy and it reinforces your original belief. So our unconscious expectations can literally change the outcomes we experience, often without us realizing it. That's why it's so important to have a positive expectation. So one of my future videos, by the way, will be on self-fulfilling prophecies, maybe even one on positive expectation. And I always bring the science and the psychology into it for you. So these are going to be exciting topics, and I want you to subscribe right now, unconsciously, so you'll be notified when I publish these future videos. So doing before knowing. Let's talk about the developmental insight. So, like for example, children act on automatic pilot before they can explain why. If you observe young children, very young children, they're on autopilot. The adaptive unconscious develops early, guiding behavior before conscious reasoning is possible. Even as adults, we often rely on our conscious mind to explain actions that were actually driven by unconscious processes. So there are often two systems at work, one that determines what we do and another that tries to explain it after the fact. What is that saying? Like, do first and then beg for forgiveness later? That encapsulates these two systems here. So I wanted to mention something about the limits of introspection. I briefly touched on that in the last video, the limits of introspection. Despite our faith in self-reflection, much of what drives our behavior is inaccessible to introspection. I hope I have drilled this down right now. Inaccessible to introspection, our behavior. Our conscious explanations are often confabulations. What is this lovely word? This is made up. It's not true. So that's what some of our conscious explanations are. They're plausible stories we invent after the fact. And true self-knowledge comes more from observing our actions and seeking feedback than from simply looking inward, right? Observe your actions, seek feedback from those around you, your friends, your family. That's going to be crucial, not from simply inward inward. Oh gosh, if I had $1 for every online coach or someone that was just wise, ahead of everyone, or had something to teach without bothering to look at their own repetitive destructive behavior. Maybe I just know one like that, not many, but Mother of God, the limits of introspection. The division of labor and its flaws. I wanted to just briefly mention some things here. So the unconscious is excellent at detecting patterns and responding to immediate threats, right? And repeat this so you get it. The conscious mind is better at planning for the future, reflecting on the past. Sometimes people live in the past forever, so you should know this stuff really well. And correcting errors, hopefully we're doing that. But evolution didn't design a perfect system. Remember, evolution, in my last talk, I touched on this. Animals, like animals, our unconscious, our adaptive unconscious developed before our conscious mind did to where it is today. With varying degrees, as you may be well aware. So sometimes the two systems work at cross purposes, leading to errors, to biases, to rigid habits. All right, so why the heck does all this matter, Henry? Why are you telling us all of this? Make it useful and relevant. All right, 3 things here. Useful and relevant. So in terms of self-awareness and personal growth, and no, not through gratitude. Let's talk about it. Real self-knowledge. Most people believe they know why they do what they do, but research shows that much of our behavior is shaped by unconscious processes. We've been repeating this. Recognizing this helps you become more honest with yourself and opens the door to real personal growth, right? This is what opens the door to real personal growth, in addition to pain and loss in life, which are the real and main and major drivers of change. Pain and loss, and then what we're discussing today. These are the drivers for growth, not gratitude. So also, if you understand that many habits are driven by unconscious patterns, you could design better strategies to change them rather than relying on willpower alone. Oh, I have spent so much time talking about willpower from a very deep psychological standpoint in some of my earlier videos. There's many videos on willpower, but you don't want to leave things up to willpower alone because it's energy intensive. It takes a lot of work. It's powerful and it's necessary, but why would you leave it up to that alone? You've got to devise better strategies to help yourself. Number 2, better decision making. You want to avoid self-sabotage by knowing that your brain often makes decisions before you're consciously aware, and no, you can't blame it on your brain. You have to be accountable. You can set up your environment and routines to nudge yourself towards better choices. That's smart. Like spotting biases. The adaptive unconscious is prone to biases and stereotypes. So being aware of this helps you catch yourself before acting on the automatic, potentially harmful assumptions. Again, the videos on biases. Look into those. My videos on my channel. Don't go anywhere else. And 3, relationships and communication. So understanding others. Everyone is influenced by unconscious processes. So that can make you more empathetic and less judgmental. Really, think about this. We are all influenced by unconscious processes. What is it? This biblical phrase, like, they know. What did Jesus say? Something about they don't know what they do, why they're doing what they're doing. But this is what it is. So we got to be a little bit more empathetic and less judgmental. People still need to be held accountable. Everyone needs to be held accountable for their actions, but we can be more empathetic and less judgmental. And when you know that both you and others sometimes act on autopilot, you're less likely to take things personally and maybe even find solutions. So final 4th one is mental health and compassion. Reducing guilt and shame. Ooh, I have a wonderful video on reducing guilt and shame. Look up Henry's Millions and Guilt or Shame, or just scroll through the videos. It's a wonderful video based on some great research for self-forgiveness. So not all your impulses and actions are consciously chosen. Because of that, you can be kinder to yourself and reducing this some unnecessary guilt or shame. Be kinder to yourself. It's very important. And focus on observing your behavior, seeking feedback from others. We talked about that. Rather than endlessly analyzing your thoughts. Ooh, do not get stuck in that. Okay? So let's see here. Do I want to reiterate anything? So most of your decisions and actions originate unconsciously. This sense of free will and conscious control is, in part, an illusion. And if you found this exploration eye-opening, please share your thoughts in the comments and let me know what surprised you most about how your mind works. Stay tuned for more deep dives into the mysteries of psychology and the mind. Every time.